Peace, grace, and mercy to each and every one of you. What a Christmas gift that is. This, that you have a Father who wants to give that to you, and He wants you to receive it. So just receive it tonight. It's that simple. Thank you to Russ and Nancy for hosting us for 44 gatherings. It's just unbelievable. A little history on my dad, my father, Craig Nesbitt. My dad was a preacher for over 20 years, but before he was a preacher, he was an alcoholic. And he attended Frostburg University in Maryland, and his nickname was Captain Whiskey because he could outdrink whiskey any guy in the school. It didn't matter who he was. My dad could beat him in arm wrestling and beat him in drinking. And my father was the oldest child, as I'm his oldest child, and he went through a lot of trauma in his youth. His parents were divorced. His daddy, who he loved dearly, came down with a mental illness, and he was in complete shock over his dad. So his alcoholism came from a place of pain and a lack of understanding of what was happening to his life. At 22, I think 21 years old, my dad had partied on a New Year's Eve, and he got completely wasted, and he fell out of a 4-story window and cracked both his front teeth, permanently damaging his teeth for the rest of his life. You'll see it in the video. His teeth have never been the same. He rolled over and he looked to heaven and he cried out to God for that peace and that mercy and that grace. And he received it. He went to a church service and Jesus came into his life. And my little hippie father with long hair and recovered alcoholic walked into a Bible college with his hippie look and his motorcycle. He was a badass, and he walked in there, could have any woman he wanted, and he picked my mom, which is great because later on we had 6 children. And I was looking at my birth certificate. My dad had me when I was 23 years old. Can you imagine that? My dad and mom had me at 23. So my dad, after his sobriety and now understanding that someone loved him unconditionally, he took that and ran with it, and he wanted to use that to help others. What is it in the program? A lot of you alcoholics want to serve other people. And so he began to serve. So you want to be of service, right? So my dad wanted to be of service. And so my dad was called to serve others through the ministry of Christ. And so what he did was he went and started managing a resort in Daytona Beach, Florida. And you're thinking, okay, well, you're called to preach and you go to a resort. Well, that was the opportunity that was available to him. And he liked waking up in the ocean. He was a beach guy. And my brother Justin and I Justin was actually born in Daytona Beach, and we lived there on the beach, and my dad was his property manager. But he didn't stop there. He thought, you know what? I'm going to go down to the pool, and I'm going to ask all the ladies and gentlemen who are getting suntanned to turn their chairs away, face the ocean, and I'm going to preach outside on the beach. And so he became the pool pastor. He managed the resort, and he would preach to this group of people that were getting a suntan. And he thought you could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You could receive a beautiful message in a beautiful place, which is what we're doing right now. It was a very unconventional way to do church, but he loved that because he wasn't interrupting them, sending them to some stale building. They got to overlook the ocean. Now, something I've never shared about this was there was an old woman that came up to my father when I was 3 years old. I'm 33 right now. So 30 years ago, this old woman came up to my dad while he was preaching on the beach. And she was kind of like the oracle from the Matrix. He didn't know where she came from. He never saw her again. He didn't know if it was an angel, but he was visited by a prophet, like Christian gives prophetic words, a prophet. Just so you know, if you're not familiar with the scriptures, prophets predicted the birth of Christ 600 years before it actually happens. It's historical, documented. It's in there. They predicted the birth of Christ. So the words of the prophets are very powerful. So here my dad is, me and Justin are just little kids, and up comes this old woman, and my dad shared this with me later in life, and she goes, you're going to be the guy to reach Hollywood for Christ. And what I mean by reach Hollywood for Christ is heal the brokenhearted and set the captives free. That's the anointing of Jesus Christ. My dad thought she was crazy. He's like, I'll never go to Hollywood a day in my life. I'm never going to be in Hollywood ever. Along comes his firstborn son, and implanted in me was the desire, the passion. I fell head over heels in love, madly in love with movies and television. I grew up in the church, but I'd go to the movies to see what the rest of the world looked like. And I received so much. And so I always had this desire to go to Hollywood, and my brother Justin as well. The 2 of us that were there as babies 30 years ago. And I'm telling you, I'm everything today, the man that I am, the ministry that I have, because of my father. And Hebrews said that all these died in faith, not having received the promise. But see, the promise was for his children. And you are sitting on the other side of that prophetic word. Do you understand that? 30 years ago, a woman said that he would be in Hollywood. I am in Hollywood here tonight. Our family is ministering to you. That means that God, the Father, predestined before time that you would be in this room. And he sought after you. He planned this whole thing that you would be here right now and that we would be ministering to you as a family. My dad later went on, moved back to Frederick, Maryland, where he is now buried. By the way, he died on the beach 2 years ago of a massive heart attack at the age of 54. His arteries were clogged, and while I was on the beach looking at the sunset, he fell to the ground and never got back up again. And he died on the beach, where the same place where he got the prophetic word. But he's buried in Frederick, Maryland. It's about 45 minutes from Baltimore. And that's where my dad had his ministry. He had a church called Frederick Community Church. And I love more than anything going to see my daddy preach on a Sunday. He gave me and Justin and Noelle, we all had jobs. I taught the Sunday school, whatever. We were all working in the church. But he met it in elementary school, so it was cool. He would set up the chairs, put them down, and then on Monday when school started, nobody knew there was a church there. Because he didn't want people to get attached to a building. He wanted people to get attached to each other through the message of Christ. And so my dad had this unique way of ministering to people. So he did that for 8 years, and then everything kind of folded. But the name of his church was Frederick Community Church, because even though he came from a Baptist denomination, he didn't want to put a denominational religious branding on things. He wanted everybody to walk in, feel accepted and wanted, and not feel unqualified because they didn't believe the same system that was being preached. So it was a community church. And so as we gather today as a community and come together to heal one another, uplift one another, and be there for one another, that's really the anointing of my Father. And I'm just really grateful that I get to continue that. So thankful to you guys for letting me do that every week. So I wanted to give you a little backstory. Now, my dad's birthday was yesterday, and my sister Noelle's birthday is today. And she's going to explain to you a little bit about that. But Noelle, she came home in a stocking on the 22nd, and that was the best stocking stuffer we've ever had. And what was beautiful about Noelle is my mom named her and dad after the song, "The First Noel the Angels Did Sing," was to proclaim the birth of Christ. So Noelle is that voice and that birth, and I'm going to let her introduce our guest speaker tonight. So here you go, Noelle. Don't forget to tell her happy birthday if you talk to her.
Thank you. Well, it's good being here. So as he just said, well, first, I'm the one girl out of 5 boys, and I'm one of the few girl Nesbitts that there is in the family. And yes, today is my birthday, but most importantly, yesterday was my dad's birthday. And for 24 years, ever since I was born, he was really selfless and only focused on me. I mean, to blowing out the candles, baking a cake, letting me get all the gifts. I would be like, let's throw birthday parties for us. And of course, it'd be all about me. And he never said anything. And I think that as a father, it was so important. Like, he chose to care so much about me and my birthday. And he wanted me to be born so bad on his day. And of course, it didn't happen. But he was a selfless man. So in honor of him, I wanted to honor him on my birthday and let him have a chance to speak, as he loved to preach, and that was his desire. So I thought it was a great opportunity for you guys to hear him. And then my brother Josh passed away when he was 21, and I don't really want to go into detail about it, but there's a new movie coming out called The Concussion by Will Smith, and that's familiar to Joshua's story, so that's kind of how he passed away. Not exactly, but it goes to more details with that. My dad, as a man that lived for God, he chose to speak his own son's funeral and preach, and he did that because he was so mad at the devil for taking his son. So this is the opportunity where you guys get to hear him speak, and I wanted to share. I made this book, or I gave this book to my dad for Father's Day, the last Father's Day he was alive, and it was questions like, Dad, what was your favorite childhood memory? What was the favorite birth of your children? And one of the things that I was asked was, how would you want to be remembered? And this is what he said. More than anything else, I want to be remembered as a man who knew Jesus Christ. I would want them to know that without Jesus, I would have nothing. In fact, I doubt that I would have been a father or even lived to be 35 years old without him. Until I began walking with Jesus, I was on a fast path to destruction. He completely changed my life. So he was a man that lived for God, and we all, you're going to see, we all spoke before Dad. Each child spoke, and then I was the last one, and then my dad went in to preach. So thank you, and enjoy.